Muy buenos días a todos. Comenzamos la mañana de hoy, que es tanto como decir que nos ponemos en el día del Ecuador del curso. Esperemos que todo lo que hace a su alojamiento, a su estancia en Santander, en el Palacio de la Magdalena, todo esté bien y que a partir de ahora pues también vamos a tener intervenciones muy interesantes. El primer punto, la primera temática con la que abrimos este miércoles se denomina el reto de compartir buenas prácticas en un mundo global, creación de una red de aprendizaje global. Para ello tenemos con nosotros a Elyse Rossi, que es Program Manager en la red que queremos presentarles, que se llama una red de aprendizaje global denominada America Achieves. Esta red se creó como consecuencia de la participación de centros educativos en Estados Unidos de Pisa for Schools. ¿Por qué? Porque, como hemos visto a lo largo de las intervenciones, ha habido una serie de países pioneros, pocos, entre los cuales estamos España. Estados Unidos, Canadá, Reino Unido, España, hemos sido, digamos, la avanzadilla para empezar este programa porque enseguida los técnicos del Instituto Nacional vieron la importancia de tener esta evaluación en nuestros centros educativos y comenzar cuanto antes, puesto que suponía la edición de un pilotaje previo. Y por ello también han considerado importante participar en esta red de America Achieves desde el punto de vista, primero, de asistir a eventos que ellos organizan una vez al año para centros educativos. Ya hay incluso aquí en la sala representantes que han estado ya en el evento anual de America Achieves. Durante 2 años se ha podido participar. A la vuelta, el feedback y la información que nos transmiten es que ha sido una oportunidad extraordinaria de intercambiar, tanto de manera directa como a través de soportes informáticos, de estar en contacto con docentes de cualquier parte del mundo que habían participado en Pisa para centros educativos y, por lo tanto, siempre cuando estábamos organizando el seminario, la verdad es que soñábamos con tener a alguien en directo que pudiese contar la experiencia. Y así lo hemos ido trabajando y lo que ocurre es que America Achieves, claro, como se proyecta realmente a todos los países de la OCDE y a cualquiera que desde la red pueda acceder a ello, tienen unas agendas absolutamente solicitadas, pero la verdad es que yo creo que podemos decir que es un privilegio el que Elyse nos pueda acompañar hoy. Pues va a dar comienzo a su...
Okay. Can you hear me? All right, good morning. I'm Elyse Rossi. Thank you so much for having me today. As you heard, I am a program manager with the Global Learning Network at America Achieves, and America Achieves is an education nonprofit organization based in the United States. We have offices in Washington, D.C. and in New York. And so today I've been asked to talk about the Global Learning Network, which is the network that we've put together in the United States for participants in the Pisa for Schools assessment. So to begin, I know you had a presentation on this yesterday, but really quickly want to do a quick overview of Pisa for Schools just to set the context for this conversation. So as you know, Pisa for Schools is based on the international Pisa exam that's given every 3 years. It's given to 15-year-olds, and it is a voluntary, about 3.5-hour assessment. And Pisa for Schools tests student knowledge in math, reading, and science. And it also asks students to complete a questionnaire that has them answering questions about the school climate, about teacher-student relations, the disciplinary climate, their belief in their own ability, and also the degree to which they see math and science as relevant to their future. And so once a school takes the assessment, they receive a very detailed report. Many of you may have seen this. It's over 100 pages, and it includes a ton of data, a ton of really valuable data. You get information on how your students perform across the 6 proficiency levels in math, reading, and science. You get information on how your school performs relative to its socioeconomic status, and then you also receive all of that really valuable survey data. And what's really great about this assessment is you're not just getting scores, but it's placing these scores in the context of your school, the context of your country. So it's adding even more value to this wealth of information that you're receiving. So we consider there to be 5 major benefits to participating in PISA for schools. The first is that this is an international benchmarking exam, and it allows schools to benchmark themselves across the world. And so this is something that you can't really find anywhere else, and we do live in a global economy. Our students are competing with other students not only in their own country, but across the globe for jobs and even places at universities. So we think that's one of the major values of this assessment. The second major value is that this is a diagnostic exam. This is something that we stress very, very hard in our community, is that this is not an accountability measure. This isn't designed to get you in trouble if your students aren't performing where you want them to be. This is designed to be a tool for learning. So we want you to take your data, understand your data, and then use that information to make really relevant and effective change. Thirdly, we find this to be a very rich measure. As I said previously, you get a ton of really great data from this, data that you can't really get some other places. Many of our members really value the student survey data. They say that this is something that they have never had access to, and in many ways, without this assessment, they wouldn't be able to quantify or even gather that type of data from their students. Next, we find this to be a very manageable assessment. Unlike a lot of assessments, you don't need to test every single student, and this is also only a 3.5-hour exam, as opposed to maybe a week-long exam like many of the assessments in the United States are. And finally, this is a very accessible assessment. This past school year, it was brought online, fully online, and so which also reduced the cost to schools. And so this is something that we're very excited about. We've received great response from our members about the online version of the assessment, and so we're really excited to see this and move forward with this version of the assessment. So before I get into the Global Learning Network, I wanted to share this quote with you because I think that it sums up very well what the mission of the Global Learning Network is. And the quote is, "If educational reformers continue to do what they have always done, education would continue to get more of the same. Great variability in outcomes that often further disadvantages the most disadvantaged in our society." So just keep that in mind as we're going through this conversation today because you'll see that this is a recurring theme. So what is the Global Learning Network? This was touched on briefly in the introduction, but this is a community for participants in the Pisa for School exam. And these are leaders that are very committed to furthering student outcomes in the United States. And so what we're really trying to do with this network is bring them all together so that they can connect with one another and learn from one another to really achieve this goal. So for the network, we have created a few goals. Our major goal, our main mission is that we want to improve outcomes for all students, regardless of where they are, what their achievement level is, and what their socioeconomic status is. We want all students to be better. And so we've designed 3 goals that you'll see above, and these are designed to help us achieve this overarching goal. So the first one is that we aim to create an authentic community. We want this to be a community where people want to come together. They want to talk with one another. A really important part of creating this authentic community is one that we create opportunities for members to connect with one another, but also that we have created this community to be a safe space. This is a space where you can be very candid with each other. You can talk about, the not so pretty stuff. Maybe your data, your results aren't where you want them to be. You should be able to share that. You should be able to talk about the different challenges that you're facing, but also want to share the successes that you've realized. So we want this to be a community where our members can have very open communication with one another and not worry about anybody going out and repeating anything that's been discussed within the community. The second goal is to facilitate understanding and exposure. And this has 2 parts, really. The first is that we want our members to understand their data. The reports they receive are very, very dense with very rich data, and so understanding that data is the first part to making effective change. And so we work really hard with our members to constantly help them understand how to read the different charts in the report, what that report is telling them, so that they can truly identify the areas in which they need to make improvements. And then once they've identified those areas and truly understood their data, we move on to the exposure piece. And this is where we expose them to best practices. And this is where a lot of the connections are formed, where we have schools coming and much of our programming is member-led. So we have members coming and sharing what's working really well in their school. What have they done to become a high-performing school? What have they done to make improvements from year to year and realize gains on each administration of the assessment? And I'll get a little bit more into later in this presentation about how we do that. And then finally, our goal is to elevate successful voices. For us to realize this goal, we need to create a movement around this. We need all stakeholders involved in improving student outcomes. And so we really want to not only publicize the need for improvement within the U.S. education system, but also want to highlight the great work that our members are doing so that people can see that there's great work happening throughout the United States, but we need great work to happen throughout the entire United States, all throughout it, in order to realize this major goal. So to help you understand the Global Learning Network, we've divided this into 4 parts. The first is the why. Why do we even have the Global Learning Network? The second is the what. What do we do? The third is the who is part of this network. And the final one is how. How are we going to evaluate the success of the network to make sure that we're moving towards that goal of improving outcomes for all students? So the why. Why do we need the Global Learning Network? So I don't think it's any secret that the U.S. does not always perform very well on Pisa. And so this data is showing you across math, reading, and science, it's dividing the U.S. into the 4 socioeconomic quarters. And it's showing us how many countries perform, where countries perform relative to us. So the blue lines are showing you the number of countries that perform significantly above the United States. The light green are those countries that are statistically equivalent to the United States. And then the dark green are the countries that are significantly below the United States. So you can see that the U.S. sits about the middle of the pack. And what this is telling us is that we're not preparing students well enough for success in college and career in a global economy. And we continue to see this because we see that more than 50% of students in the U.S. are entering 2-year colleges and needing to take remedial courses. And this is not only expensive and creates an additional financial strain on the student, but it also extends the amount of time that they need to finish their degree, which reduces the likelihood that they'll actually finish that degree. And then also, we're seeing U.S. companies, time and time again, they're going outside the U.S. borders to find talent. And they're hiring many foreign workers, especially in the STEM fields, because U.S. students just don't have the skills that these companies need. And so there are a bunch of other things that are highlighting the need for the Global Learning Network. One is that education is very decentralized in the United States. Everybody kind of does their own thing. There isn't one coordinated effort. And in order to realize true sustainable change, we need all of these stakeholders to come together, work together towards a common goal, and really show a unified front. So we need to get everybody involved. We need teachers, we need parents, we need policymakers, we need community members to all work together. Another major issue is, and I don't know if you see this here in Spain, but there's this idea in the United States that this problem of students not being prepared doesn't affect me and isn't a problem for me because my child is fine or my child's school is fine. And that's just not the case. Many of our members get their data back and they are from Pisa for schools and they're very surprised to see that they did not perform as well as they expected to. So they're not as good as they think they are, and they do have a lot of areas in which they can improve. And also, the world is constantly changing and we do need to keep up. And the U.S. has made some improvement over the years, but we're not getting better fast enough. And we see countries like Poland and Germany that are getting better much more quickly. And so these are definitely systems that we want to learn some lessons from. So very quickly, I want to take you through the timeline of the Global Learning Network. We're about 3 years old. So Pisa for Schools was piloted in the U.S. in 2012 in 104 U.S. high schools. Moving into the 2013-2014 school year, this was the first year that the assessment was made available to any high school in the United States. This was the year that we established the GLN, recognizing the need for a network. We also had our first annual conference, the Pisa for Schools conference. And I'll get into a little bit more detail about what goes on in those conferences in a little bit. But that's an opportunity for all of our members to come together in person in Washington, D.C., to just form those connections, talk with one another, and really learn some information they can take back with them to their schools and districts. And that year we had over 250 schools join the Global Learning Network. The 2014-2015 school year, we had 88 schools join the network. We also had our second Pisa for Schools conference, and we also established the Global Learning Network Leadership Council. So the Leadership Council is a body that sits within the Global Learning Network, made up of about 12 people, and it is mostly district superintendents and high school principals. And really this body is designed to be the voice of the network. We unfortunately don't have the capacity to poll every single one of our members to find out what they need. And so we turn to the Leadership Council to ask them what we can do to be better, a better support system for our schools. What can we do to help them achieve their goals? And we also come to the Leadership Councils for ideas of things that we want to do, to ask them if it's feasible, if it's going to be effective, if it's going to be helpful. So they're really our sounding board, and it's a great resource for us. And then this last school year, we partnered with NWEA. The assessment was brought online. We had 27 new schools join the Global Learning Network, and we'll be having our third Pisa for Schools conference in October. So we are really looking at the Global Learning Network as a network for social impact. And in many ways, this is similar to a social network, or social media network, but a few differences. So like social media, we see people coming together towards a common interest. In this case, it is improving outcomes for students in the United States. And we also see members making a lot of connections with one another. They're reaching out to each other for ideas on what they can do to, say, improve student achievement in science, or how they can communicate about their participation in the Pisa for Schools assessment. And then we also have a big hallmark of this is that we have people focused on a goal that'll result in social good. So this is kind of where social media and social network for social impact diverge, is that in social media you don't necessarily see that, but with social impact networks you do see this idea of really wanting to make the world a better place. And then finally, you have the network working together, making decisions together, adapting together. And again, you don't see this necessarily in social media, where in social media you have usually the service providers making the decisions, making the rules. But here, we really pull our members a lot to get their feedback and to learn about what we can help them with. So these are the 7 social media components. And say the first 5 probably fall under that goal of creating an authentic community. And if those of you can't see it, I'll go ahead and read them. The first is participation is voluntary. Second is members are deliberate about building, strengthening, and maintaining ties with one another. There's collective action used to solve a large, complex social problem. And decision-making is distributed throughout the membership. And then finally, the network adapts rapidly to environmental changes. And the 6th component here is related to the second goal of exposure and understanding. And so members learn, adopt, and spread best practices. And this is obviously a key item that we do because without action, change can't be realized. And then finally, and this falls under our 3rd goal of elevating successful voices, is that members advocate for change in public policies. So our work is, relatively speaking, our work is very small scale. For true change to take place across the education system, we need to affect policy. And so we're really trying to create a movement around this work using the Global Learning Network to spread this idea of the need for widespread change within the U.S. education system. All right, moving on to the what. What do we do? And this is where I'll get into a little bit more detail about the different programming that we do and how it supports our major goals. So we have our annual conferences, which we've talked a little bit about. These are held every year in Washington, D.C., and brings our members together and is really an opportunity for them to just talk with one another, share what concerns they have, challenges they're facing, what's working and what's not. At these conferences, we offer a variety of breakout sessions, ranging in topics from best practices in math to to how to develop social emotional skills in students, to how do you communicate it with your stakeholders about your participation in this assessment. So we really try to have a variety of topics accessible to our members at these conferences so they can go to the breakout session that best suits their interest. Because at these conferences, we want them to come away with the information that they need to go back and make effective change in their school or district. We also have regional meetings, and these regional meetings actually came out of the 2014 annual conference. At that conference, we got a lot of feedback from members saying we want even more opportunities to interact with one another in person, and we want to form deeper ties with the people in our own state. Because many times people in the same state are experiencing the same education issues, especially when it comes to policy that's dictating how education is structured in that given state. So these regional meetings take place in a state and bring together all of the schools that have participated in that state in Pisa for schools. And they're like mini annual conferences. People take time to discuss their results. We do a much deeper dive into what your results are telling you. And then we also hear from members about what they're doing in their own schools and districts that's been successful. And so far we've had a number of these meetings. We've had one in the state of Texas. We've had one in the Washington, D.C. area. We did one in the state of Iowa in partnership with the governor's office there. We're thinking about doing one in Florida in this coming year. And determining where we go for these is really just based on demand. If there is a leader in a state that wants to do this, then we work with them to put these meetings on. We also do webinars. So we have a very large network. We're about close to 500 schools in the U.S., and everybody spread out across the U.S. So to reach all of our members, we do virtual convenings or webinars, and these are, again, chances for our members to learn from one another. These are largely member-led, and so we will select 2 or 3 members for each webinar and ask them to share their story. What are they doing that's either A, supporting them in being a high-performing school, or B, if they've taken the assessment multiple times, what's allowing them to make improvement each time they're taking the assessment? How are they realizing these gains in student achievement? So we try to make these as interactive as possible. Yes, there's a presentation element to them, but also there's a lot of time devoted to question and answer during these so that the participants can ask questions of the presenter. And we are having one on July 21st on best practices in science, so if any of you are interested in joining, would love to have you. And if you are interested in participating, I'll put my contact information up at the end, and you can let me know if you're interested. Moving on to elevating network voice, like I said, a big part of this is just getting the word out about how important improving student outcomes is so that we can make sure that our students are successful later in life. And so to do this, and we also want to highlight all the great work that our members are doing. So to do this, we do this in a variety of ways. One is we encourage our members to write articles and publish them in local publications. And in these articles, we ask them to talk about what they're doing, talk about why they participated in the assessment, what's the value that they've gotten out of the assessment, what's been valuable to them about the Global Learning Network. And then we also do case studies where we go into select districts and we do a deep dive there and really try to tease out what is contributing to their success. What are the instructional practices that are working well there? What are the policy level decisions that are at the district level? What's helping them to be successful at the district level? Also, what are the operational? What school schedules are successful in these districts? So those are really helpful. You can find a lot of those actually on our website, which I'll give the link to at the end. Research. So we are a fairly new network. We're only about 3 years old, so we're just starting to really talk about this research piece. But really want to start grounding these best practices in research. Right now they're very anecdotal, but really looking to tease out really what's contributing to the differences between schools and differences in performance between schools when holding constant for socioeconomic status and size and all of that. So that is something that we're working on previously. We have a few studies in progress right now, so we're very excited to see the results of those. And then finally, we are always focused on recruitment. For this network to be successful, for us to reach our goals, we need to create, like I said, this movement around the importance of improving student outcomes. And to do that, we need to create a critical mass. And so we're always encouraging new schools to participate in the assessment and use the assessment as a tool for learning so they can make really thoughtful change within their school and district. All right, the WHO. So WHO is part of the Global Learning Network. As you know, it's for schools that have participated in the Pisa for Schools exam. Right now, we're in 42 states, 188 districts. We're actually at about 475 schools with the number of schools that participated this year. So all in all, we're reaching over 600,000 students with the work that we're doing. And this shows you kind of where we're spread out across the United States. As you can see, there are the gray states are states where we don't have any members yet. So we're actively recruiting in those states to find schools that'll be part of our network there. So I'd like to play a short video. So this was created around the pilot in 2012, and so you can hear from our members a little bit about what they're doing, why they took the assessment, and the value that they've gotten out of it. It's really short, it's only about 2 minutes, but I think it'll be helpful for you to hear from our members. Hopefully it'll work. What's that?
Perhaps in this one, if you pick one, because okay. Put all the slides. Yeah,
North Star was very fortunate to be invited to this Pisa for Schools pilot. We've had success at the local level, but for us to be able to compare our performance at an international level allows us to set a higher bar for ourselves and to say, how will our students compete in the landscape that's the one that is the world in front of them? When they're taking a job in the future, they're not just fighting for a spot with another American, it's from anybody across the world.
Lucia Marr wanted to participate in the pilot test because we have a vision for where we want our students to be in terms of 21st century learning and critical thinking skills and collaboration, and we felt that the test was one of the better indications of how well students were doing with that. And it's a big shift for teachers to get there, but that test was going to be a great wake-up call for us to see how well are we doing with trying to make sure that our kids are ready for the future.
This came out as an opportunity, and the first thing I thought of is I have a ton of information on how we do relative to other students in the state of Virginia. I have a good amount of information on how we do compared to the rest of the United States. What I don't have is information on how we do globally. I wanted to know, how do we do as a school? Are my faculty members preparing our students to compete against the rest of the world? Because that's what their post-collegiate life is going to look like.
The analysis that is within the OECD test is incredibly sophisticated, more than we have seen on any assessment, and we are known for knowing a lot about high school assessments. It breaks down the data in so many different parameters that it provides many different avenues into addressing the deficiencies that are evident in the data.
So I think it's a very rich report. It's a lot. You have to take it in small pieces to really benefit from it, but the links are very powerful. The comparison also with private schools has been powerful for us to look at, I think especially as charters are evolving and things like that. It's a very rich report. It really is a year-long study, and it's powerful professional development.
It was so in-depth, so interesting. I was actually compelled to read it rather than forced to. I mean, I felt like I wanted to read it. It was fascinating. That, to me, I thought was incredibly valuable. It told me things like whether or not my students were deep readers or broad readers. Fascinating information about my students that I'm going to use as I go forward.
All right, sorry for the distortion, but I hope you could at least hear what our members were saying about the value of the assessment and how this Pisa for Schools is different than most of the assessments that are available in the U.S. and the type of data that they receive from it and how helpful it is to them to have that type of information to make really effective and thoughtful change. This video is on our website, so if you would like to look at it, actually see the video, you can definitely visit our website. So the why, the how. So this is kind of bringing you up to present day because right now we're at about the point where we want to start evaluating our network. We want to determine, are we successful? Are we doing the right things to really move ourselves towards this goal of improving outcomes for all students? So I'm going to kind of take you through our thought process in terms of our evaluation process. We're in the middle of it right now. So I don't have anything concrete to share with you, but just kind of want to take you through our process of how we're thinking about it. So this is the evaluation process this is the framework that we're using. So the first is we need to determine our focus. What do we want to learn from this evaluation? And then next we want to move into mapping it and thinking about, okay, what are the long-term impacts of this evaluation? This could be anything from, this is going to show us how to use our resources more effectively, so we can deliver higher quality programs. It could also be something much larger scale as, more students are graduating from high school and going on to university. And we also want to keep in mind, are there any policy implications? Like I said, a huge component of us reaching our goal is making sure that we're eventually affecting policy and eventually encouraging policymakers to make policy changes that really support U.S. students in their achievement. Next, we need to figure out, we need to prioritize. Figure out, based on what we want to learn, what part of our program do we need to evaluate? Which ones do we need to prioritize for the evaluation process? And then next we move into the design where we're looking at, what are the impact measures? What are the policy goal measures? What are the process measures? And what are the outcome measures? And then finally, we get to the actual data collection. And really basically what we determine in these first 4 steps will really help to shape our data collection plan and what type of data we want to get and how we plan to collect it. So there is a ton of data that we could collect, a ton of ways that we could collect data. So far, we've mostly relied on questionnaires where we've surveyed our members. We've surveyed them pretty regularly. We survey them after any event. So after the annual conference, after any regional meeting, after any webinar, we ask them to give us feedback on those. And we also survey them once a year. We do a big annual survey to let them weigh in on kind of the bigger strategic visions for the network. And we've also, to an extent, relied on expert judgment through the use of the Leadership Council. And these are individuals who have been in education for a very long time, are very respected in their field. And so having their insight has been really helpful to us. But I think moving forward, while we still, of course, want to rely on our Leadership Council, it might be really useful to us to have expert judgment from somebody who's outside of the Global Learning Network to get a different perspective on what we're doing. And what we're thinking about right now, some of the major methods that we think will be most useful to us are probably looking at activity participation and numbers, so looking at the number of members who are attending any one of our programming, so the annual meeting, the regional meetings, webinars, or how else they're participating through maybe doing a video case study with us or taking the assessment X number of times. Also, looking at ethnographic analysis, so looking at for the members who are in our network and they're involved in our network and very committed to our network. What does their achievement levels look like? Are they going up? Are they not? Are they going down? And what's causing that? Also, probably another one that we want to look at is maybe a focus group or looking at doing interviews where we can get more in-depth, we can ask more in-depth questions of our members and get maybe some more detailed information from them than maybe we could get through a questionnaire. But like I said, a ton of different methods available to us, so we'll just need to determine which ones will best suit our needs. And once we come up with a data collection plan, we plan to lay it out in a chart that looks like this. So making sure that we're answering every single one of these questions to make sure that we are collecting data as efficiently as possible. So definitely want to know what questions we're going to be answering, what the metric will be, where we're going to get that information, and also how often we're going to be collecting that type of data. Right? And so we're going to be looking, throughout our evaluation process, we're going to be looking at these 6 main dimensions of evaluation. So under connectivity, you have membership, so that's looking at who's part of this network, what are the relationships that are being made throughout this network, and then also looking at the structure. What structures are in place to facilitate these connections? Are they effective? Are they not? How should they be changed? Looking at the health of the network. Resources, that's a big one, right? So looking at, of the resources that we have, are we using them effectively? Could we be using them in a different way? But also thinking about, okay, for resources that we don't have, what resources do we want? What resources will be helpful to us? Also looking at infrastructure to make sure that the infrastructure that's in place is really contributing to the health of the network. So communications within our network, making sure that we're communicating effectively and in a way that makes people feel very connected to the network. Also looking at, for lack of a better term, rules and regulations within our network. Like I said, a big part of the success of our network is creating this safe space where people feel comfortable talking about the good, bad, and the ugly with each other, and not worrying about getting in trouble for it or being judged for it. We want these to be very candid conversations because that's the way that true change happens. And then finally, looking at the results. First, looking at interim outcomes. Yes, we have these major goals that we've laid out for the network, but it's going to take time to meet those. So are we reaching our incremental goals along the way that are eventually going to take us to these larger goals? And then finally, overall impact. This is that goal of improving outcomes for all students. So really want to measure the degree to which we're making progress against that goal and how we can be better about reaching that goal. So I want to just leave you with this proverb because I think it sums up very well, what this idea of what the global learning network is and the sentiment behind it. It is, if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So with that, if you are interested in learning more, this is our website, globallearningnetwork.americaachieves.org. You can follow us on Twitter at GLN Schools. And then this is my contact information, and as well as for Reva Jones, who is our Senior Director. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. If you're interested in our July 21st webinar, feel free to send me an email, and I can send you the registration information for that. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Muy bien, pues comenzamos el debate y las preguntas que tengamos en la sala para ella. Realmente con las tecnologías en Estados Unidos dicen que siempre hay un momento de pánico con las tecnologías. Realmente lo hemos pasado, pues nuestras disculpas, pero parece ser que no era compatible el vídeo que ella traía y estamos intentando descargarlo por si en algún momento a lo largo de la mañana lo pudiéramos ver. ¿Vale? Si es posible, pues lo ofrecemos. Pues ella ya está disponible. Everything's okay? Okay.
Hola, buenos días. Ha sido muy interesante tu exposición y como muy positiva para que pudiésemos en España hacer redes de este tipo. Pero lo que sí yo no he escuchado, no lo he entendido, ¿qué tipo de centros son? Imagino que, bueno, no nos has dicho el nivel ni sociocultural, ni socioeconómico, ni ni si son públicos, si son, es decir, qué tipo de centros son los que están adheridos a vuestra red.
Of course. So our network is open to any school that has participated in Pisa for Schools. Mostly these are public high schools in the U.S., so that makes up the bulk of our membership by and large. We do have a few private schools, but for the most part these are public high schools. And as far as public high schools, these are made up of both traditional high schools but also charter schools within the United States.
Buenos días.
Gotta hold it. Okay.
Quería preguntarte, porque parece ser que por el momento todos los centros de la red son americanos, ¿no? ¿Habría la posibilidad de que centros españoles se incorporasen a la Global Learning Network y participar en sus actividades?
So of course, welcome to participate in our activities. Part of the reason why we've limited this to the U.S. for now is that we're essentially still piloting this. So we want to work out the kinks and use our schools as the guinea pigs before opening up to the broader Pisa for Schools network to make sure that what we're doing is going to be successful and is going to be supportive of all schools. So yes, our hope is down the line to absolutely bring this outside of U.S. borders, but right now this is kind of right now we're in the learning stage of things. So really want to make sure that we're making this as successful as possible. But of course, like I said, you're more than welcome to attend our webinars. And I know we've had representatives from Spain come to the annual meeting, which has been great and has brought some wonderful knowledge to our members.
Hola, me gustaría preguntarte si tenéis datos sobre cómo esta red de aprendizaje global y compartir experiencias desde el aula y desde los centros educativos ha hecho que los profesores hayan cambiado sus estilos de enseñanza o hayan compartido materiales, recursos, actuaciones que llevan a cabo de forma general y específicas para atender a algún tipo de alumnado, y también si los directores de centros educativos han identificado aspectos relevantes que hacen que los resultados de sus alumnos y el entorno y el clima de sus centros sea satisfactorio, y si se han puesto en común y qué tipo de información y de conclusiones también a través de esta red han posibilitado el hacer una reflexión profunda y el tomar elementos de contexto también para poner en práctica. Muchas gracias.
So we don't have any hard data, I would say, in terms of what instructional practices do lead to better student outcomes. The data that we do have now, and I kind of touched on this, the data that we have now is largely anecdotal. It's just based on what we hear from individual schools about what's working there. But in many, many cases, what people have learned from other members has influenced instructional practices. For example, we had one school shared how after getting their results, they realized that they needed to challenge their students better. So what they've done is they've promoted this idea of a safe struggle where the teachers are hands off and they make their students work through the problem, reason through the problem. If it doesn't work one way, go back and try it another way. So they make it so that students shouldn't be afraid to fail. They should be able to go in and try different ways of approaching a problem, because that's where the true learning happens. We've also had schools revamp their assessments, so changing the type of questions that they're asking of students. So not asking them to just fill in a multiple choice A, B, or C, but asking them to write out their reasoning. And another one that I can think of is one school has changed the way in which it's graded their assessments. So a student, there's a lot more writing involved. They have to share their reasoning, and for how they grade it is that a student, even if they get the wrong answer, if they are able to show their reasoning behind it, they still get a partial credit. So really promoting this idea of critical thinking and problem solving rather than just memorizing something for memorization's sake. And a lot of this sharing among members is happening through our virtual convenings, our webinars, but also really any chance we get to convene members, we want them sharing with each other. So this happens at regional meetings, this happens at the annual convenings. We also have the video case studies and the written case studies on our website as a resource for people to access. And you asked about sharing resources. Yes, our members do share resources. Some presenters, I can think of one off the top of my head that shared a writing rubric that they created based on their OECD, or excuse me, their Pisa for Schools results. And they were more than happy to share that with the entire membership. And I know that some schools have taken that rubric and tailored it to their own school and made it so that it can be useful in their own writing program.
Sí, una pregunta, perdona. No sé si lo has comentado. ¿Son los centros los que se interesan en participar en la red o vosotros los que contactáis con los centros que han participado en Pisa for School? ¿Cómo es ese primer contacto?
To get them to participate in the assessment?
En América.
In terms of including schools in the network, are you proactive? Is decision from schools?
Mm-hmm. So any school that is in the U.S. that has participated in Pisa for Schools is automatically in the network, but the way we reach schools, there's a few different ways. One, we work with NWEA, and they do a lot of the recruitment. In the past, we have done the recruitment where we've reached out to our networks and tried to get in touch with superintendents who might be interested in participating. We've also had schools reach out to us because they've heard from their friend at another school about the assessment and they're interested in it. In terms of choosing which schools present at our different events, that's really, we take the time to look at each school's data to figure out which school is either a high-performing school and has a good story about what's contributing to that strong performance, or if they've improved throughout multiple administrations of the assessment. That's really what we want, the improvement story. That's the big story. That's what everybody's working towards. So we definitely like to highlight that as much as possible.
Bueno, muchas gracias por tu intervención. Es una pregunta más, si quieres, de nivel emocional. Cuando una persona está en un centro, tiene el trabajo día a día que es muy presionante, que tiene muchas cosas que hacer, debe costar, o si tenéis de alguna manera visto, cómo superar esa barrera emocional de decir, mi trabajo es en torno a un contexto y un centro concreto para salir a un mundo más global donde no me voy a encontrar con los 446 centros, sino que a lo mejor de ellos contacto con algunos, ¿no? Si esa dificultad habéis visto cómo superarla, cómo abordarla, qué experiencias hay en ello, ¿no? Gracias.
So a big part of this is, and we do have issues with that. We know that schools are very busy, teachers are very busy, administrators are incredibly busy, and we do have issues with schools just taking the assessment, looking at their results once, and then not doing anything with it. So it takes a level of commitment from the top down to really dig in and work on this and make this a priority, because we know that there are many competing priorities, but where this has been the most successful is that there has been a leader, a champion at each school, and they've carved out time for themselves, for their staff, for their teachers, to devote time to looking at the results, to doing professional development around this, and to really talk about the planning process. So it's really about prioritizing this as best you can in a world where there are so many competing priorities. Did that answer your question?
Es priorizar, pero a veces como el bloqueo viene por el mundo pequeño en que cada uno vive, pues claro, yo entiendo que hay que priorizar, pero a lo mejor es más de los que llevan la escuela, de los principals o...
Absolutely, and that's where we have that success, is that it's a leader mobilizing his or her staff. Because we know that one person can't do this alone. It's very much a team effort. But it does take that one leader who's going to say, this is a priority for us. We're going to devote time to this and make sure that we're all working together to really make sure that we're using this information as well, in conjunction with other information we might have, to really create the right improvement plan for our school or for our district.
Hola, buenos días. Mira, yo quería saber lo siguiente. A largo plazo, porque acabáis de empezar hace poco, como has dicho, pero ¿tenéis intención de hacer como algún catálogo de buenas prácticas que en definitiva, podéis comprobarlas o detectarlas científicamente y que, eso pueda provocar cambios en las políticas educativas? Es decir, sacar prácticas que sabemos que dan buenos resultados al éxito escolar. Eso sería un poco, ¿vale? Gracias.
Yes, we have absolutely thought about that, and that's really where a lot of the research element that I was talking about, that's what that's going to support, is teasing out what truly makes it a best practice. And so, like I said, we're very new still, so we're starting to get to that point where we have enough data to do that type of research, and enough subjects, I guess, to do that type of research, but absolutely something that we're working towards, because certainly something that our membership has been asking for.
Muchas gracias. Yo solamente quería saber a qué nivel pensáis que puede influir en la política educativa, supongo que sea en Estados Unidos, o realmente se puede extender a un nivel globalizador tremendo. ¿Qué ambición tenéis? ¿Qué mecanismos se buscan o se utilizan para que ese impacto llegue? Y si realmente tiene una visión de globalización, porque esto ya extiende mucho más que una política educativa de un país, sino que esto, digamos, influye más en otros contextos mucho más globales. Entonces, ¿cuál es realmente el objetivo real que tiene la asociación? Gracias.
So it's absolutely, like I said, this is, while it's mostly contained in the U.S. right now, is that we're still piloting it and finding out what makes this successful. But absolutely, we want to involve other countries. There's so much to learn from other systems, and so, which is why this assessment in Pisa is so great. And so definitely it's something that we want to open up to. We've had representatives from Poland, from Spain, from the United Kingdom, from Japan come to our conference and share what they're doing. And I know that the United Kingdom is thinking of doing something similar to this in the United Kingdom. So our absolute goal is to make this truly a global learning network. It's just, that's probably down the line in terms of, hopefully not too far down the line, but definitely want to make sure that we get things right first and then expand accordingly.
Hola, buenos días. Me gustaría saber qué protocolo de difusión de los resultados tienen vuestras escuelas y si esto podría utilizarse para hacer algún tipo de ranking de escuelas. ¿Cómo se contempla esta situación? allí en Estados Unidos.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the first part of that, please?
La difusión de los resultados de la prueba Pisa para centros educativos, cómo se hace en los Estados Unidos y si se utilizan como para hacer un ranking de las escuelas que tienen buenos resultados, las que los tienen peores, cómo se gestiona esta difusión de los resultados en la comunidad educativa.
So we do not put together any of the results. We do not send the results to the schools. The test provider does that, so we don't have anything to do with that. But the schools do share their data with us, and we work with a third-party research team to analyze all of that data, to rank the schools according to their performance in math, reading, and science, and across the different learning environment metrics. And then we also use it to look at progress over time. Are the results of the schools in the Global Learning Network, are they going up, are they going down, are they staying the same? And a lot of that influences our programs in terms of what people need to focus more on. Big thing that came out of this analysis, we found out that people didn't know their results well enough, and so we put a lot more resources behind helping our schools determine what their results report was telling them. And so we use this data a lot to also determine who's presenting at different programs, and then also what supports we need to provide. So we personally don't share any of the data publicly because we leave that up to the school because that is their data. We don't want to make that public if they don't want to. But we do have quite a few districts that do put their results out there and let the world know how they do, and they share that on their websites.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have followed your initiative in Spain very closely. We think it's a great idea. And I would like to ask you, if we wanted to do something similar here in Spain, could you tell us some pieces of advice that we could follow? For example, which were the first steps that you took to initiate this, and also which difficulties you encountered and how did you overcome them? Thank you.
Great question. So I would say the biggest thing that we've learned is that the need to make this a safe space. People need to be, I think I said this probably 6 times in my presentation, but people need to come here. They need to feel comfortable talking about the good, bad, and the ugly. Feel comfortable sharing the challenges that they're facing back at home, but also really willing to share their success. So having that free exchange of information and being able to be really candid with one another has been critical to success, because that's really the only way that real change happens. So that establishing that from the get-go was huge. And how we did that is that we told people, we said, what is discussed within the community stays within the community. And that's why we only open up our webinars to, some of our webinars are members only, because some sensitive data might be discussed during that webinar, and we want to maintain that confidentiality that's been critical to our success. So I would say that is key. The second is being able to facilitate relationships among members. If you can get them in person, that is great. That has been one of the biggest things that our members have enjoyed about the annual meetings, about regional meetings, is getting to connect with one another in person, because it's so much different having a face-to-face conversation with somebody as opposed to something over a webinar. So that is key. And then I'd say the third big thing, actually maybe 4. I'd say the third big thing is I just lost my train of thought. I'd say those are probably the 2 big things. If I think of that third one, I'll let you know. And as far as challenges, I think probably the 2 major challenges are one, that people didn't take the time to truly understand their data when we set out doing this. It takes a long time to digest all the data that's in that report, and I don't think people realized how much time needed to be devoted to that. And I think we assumed that people would do that and put in the necessary time on their own, and they didn't. So we had to facilitate and carve out that time during regional meetings, during webinars, during annual meetings to make sure that people sat down, looked at their data, and truly understood what it was telling them. I'd say probably the other challenge that we faced is that, how do I put this? I think people were a little hesitant at times to share their data, and this goes back to this idea of making sure this is a safe space. And so to address that challenge, we laid out some rules for this community to really make sure that people felt comfortable and felt assured that their data was not going to be shared publicly. And people have held to that quite well, and that's been really important to us. I remembered my third really important thing. So the third thing that we also found is that you need to listen to your membership, take their feedback into account, and I think that's been a huge strength of ours, is that our members have given us feedback and they've been able to see that feedback incorporated into programs moving forward. And when they see that you're listening to them, they become even more invested in this network.
Sí, yo quería también hacerle alguna pregunta. ¿Cuál es su relación con el gobierno de Estados Unidos? Porque me parece que America Chiefs también está orientada hacia, digamos, este marco en el que se dice que ningún niño debe quedarse atrás. ¿Cuáles son las relaciones de America Chiefs con el gobierno de Estados Unidos? ¿Es considerada America Chiefs? ¿Hay relaciones directas? ¿Cómo es esta relación?
So we certainly have relationships in parts of the government. We have not leveraged those just yet because of all of the changes surrounding education in the U.S. recently. We kind of want to stay away from that political hotbed right now. But policy is necessary to the change that we want to see. So eventually we're going to want to find some way to inform policy changes. I will say, though, that some state governments have taken this on and championed this. We had the governor's office in the state of Iowa really push this forward and really say, okay, we want, every high school that can to take this. We want to use this data to talk about what we can do to make improvements at the state level, at the district level, and at the school level. So it's differed from state to state, and as a whole, as America Achieves, we have not done too much work at the federal government level just yet.
También quería preguntar que creo que Pisa, los resultados de Pisa, conmocionan a los países cuando los resultados no son los esperados. Por ejemplo, el caso de Alemania, muy al principio del comienzo de Pisa, el caso de Finlandia también, cómo ha ido mejorando realmente sus políticas educativas y por supuesto, hoy los tenemos en el top de los resultados. ¿Es este el caso de Estados Unidos o es una combinación de resultados PISA y realmente comprobar que los estudiantes de este nivel educativo y en general los estudiantes anteriores a la universidad no están preparados para los retos que tiene la sociedad? ¿Es una combinación de ambas? ¿Ver resultados tal vez por debajo de los esperados solo o también se combina ambas cosas? El ver que los estudiantes, con la preparación que tenían actualmente, no pueden resolver los retos del futuro y que mucha parte de esos estudiantes se van a ir quedando atrás.
I would say it's a combination of it. I think we all know that education in the United States could be better. It needs to be better. And I think that, we have this idea of yes, students don't have the skills that they need, but the problem is in the U.S. is there's this idea, but my child's fine, their school is fine, this isn't a problem that I need to worry about, when it's really everybody's problem. Because our education affects our economy, it affects, the future of this country, so it is really everybody's problem. But so getting people away from this idea that, they live in a bubble, and if their child's okay, if their school's okay, then everything's okay. And I think the PISA exams, they put that on paper. There's data showing, okay, we're middle of the pack, we're not where we need to be, we're not where we want to be. And if you look at a lot of the other data around, college, university attainment rates and all that, the United States has actually gone down a little bit over the years. And so it's a lot of this is about creating awareness. A lot of people don't think about it because they're living, in their own state, in their own city. They're not thinking about this at a national level or even an international level. And so that's a big part of what we're trying to do is raise this awareness about the need for better standards, the need for everybody to come together and work towards this common goal.
Todavía tendríamos tiempo para alguna intervención más.
Hola, muchas gracias por la ponencia que nos has dado. Yo siempre me despierta la curiosidad. Ayer hubo una pregunta de una compañera nuestra y yo voy a incidir. En esta red de aprendizaje global, ¿está contemplado de alguna manera también la participación de las familias, la participación del alumno? Porque hablamos a veces de la evaluación de los centros, del profesorado, de los cambios que supone metodológicos, didácticos, organizativos, de liderazgo en equipos directivos, pero ¿de qué manera también las familias pueden contribuir a esta aportación de datos o a esos resultados para modificar o transferir o cambios actitudinales también en la familia de cara a los estudios de los hijos, o cómo los alumnos también pueden tomar esa conciencia de participación en ese cambio tan deseado en la mejora del rendimiento y en la mejora de otras habilidades emocionales, sociales o esas capacidades intrapersonales en nuestro alumnado. Gracias.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And so a big part of what we've done, and we've done a few sessions on this both at our annual conference and we've had webinars on this, is how do you communicate with stakeholders about this assessment? How do you talk to parents about, because this is a voluntary exam, and we have quite a few, people always complain about American students being over-tested. And so now, you're going and you're saying to parents and students, oh, you have to take another test, but you're not going to get data on how your student is doing with this test. You're only going to get data on the school. So what we've put a lot of thought behind, a lot of resources behind, is how do you communicate with students and parents so that they're invested in this? And so that they see themselves as part of, this is for the good of the community, and by doing this, you're actually also helping your students and you're helping all the other students in your community. So we've had schools do a ton of outreach with their community. We had one principal phone the parents of every single student that was going to take the assessment and explain why this was so important, what they could expect, answer any questions they had about it, so that they felt really comfortable about their student taking the assessment. We've had schools change their school schedule for the day so that the students taking the assessment they're not missing class, and that's really helped to make parents and students feel more comfortable about taking the assessment. So it's about again, open communication. We stress that over and over again at all levels. Open communication about why this is so important, and why by doing this, even though you're not getting data on your own child, you are still helping your child and furthering their future by helping the school to gather this data. And America Achieves had an initiative that worked specifically with parents and families of schools, and so we worked very closely with that initiative. It's a sister initiative of ours to understand, what families are thinking when it comes to testing, what their concerns are, to gather that type of data to make sure to help inform our own success.
Pero en la red, ¿tenéis algún foro especial para que puedan participar familias y padres, igual que los centros pueden participar a través de las web? ¿En la misma red global hay algún foro para familias, para alumnos?
No, we don't. We don't. We leave that up to the schools because they're the ones with the relationships with the families. And so we want them to maintain those. Those are the better, they are going to have much better connection with the families than we ever could. So we absolutely support the schools in that, and we'll help to give them any resources that they need. But we largely leave outreach up to the schools.
Si no hay ninguna intervención más, clausuramos el tiempo de conferencia. Si hubiera, por favor, alguna pregunta, porque parece ser que el equipo de traducción se va a tener que terminar mientras nosotros tomamos el café. Y si no, luego, pues en el tiempo que ella esté con nosotros también se le pueden seguir haciendo preguntas. Muchísimas gracias a Elyse Rossi. Nos disculpamos por esta situación en la que no ha sido posible ofrecer en el tiempo adecuado el vídeo, pero creo que ella lo ha resuelto con absoluta naturalidad y realmente hemos comprendido las claves de America Chips y lo que pretenden. Creo que ha sido muy buena exposición y de verdad que se lo agradecemos, a la vez que le agradecemos la traducción de aquellas palabras que ha puesto en español. Muchas gracias, Elyse.